Chapter 7. Bread. Before breakfast the next morning, I worked to preserve the kangaroo's hide. After we ate, I told Fritz, "We're going to the wreck today. Get everything ready." I called out to Ernst and Jack to give them some parting instructions. But they had disappeared shortly after breakfast. "We need more potatoes. Perhaps they went to get some," guessed my wife. When they returned, I was a little annoyed with them for running off without permission. But they had at least had enough sense to take Turk with them. That was safer, but I didn't like the idea of my dear wife and little Franz left alone. Fritz called out to say that they were ready, that all was ready, and off we went. On our way to the bridge after Jackal River, a sudden movement startled us. We halted and reached for our guns, only to find Jack and Ernst bursting from cover, delighted that they had surprised us. "We're ready to go too, Father," said Jack. "We'll be a big help." Well, I couldn't bring myself to scold my two merry rogues. Neither could I grant their wish. "You boys can't come this time," I said firmly. "I need you to take care of your mother and little brother. Since you've come this far, you can do some work. Collect a load of salt and take it straight home. Once you're home, you mustn't run off again without telling your mother, and please tell her that our work will require us to spend the night on the wreck." As my sons accompanied us towards Tentholm, I felt a pang of guilt. I'd meant to tell her this before leaving, but I knew how she would react. The raft I wanted to build would take more than a day, and it would be a nuisance to have to return to shore. By good fortune, Jack and Ernst had given me a way to break this news to Elizabeth without confronting her objections. We soon reached shore and boarded our tub boat. "Goodbye, boys. Take care of yourselves," shouted Fritz as we shoved off. The current carried us straight to the wreck, and we were soon scrambling aboard. The raft would enable us to land all the useful things that were too big or heavy for the tugboat. We gathered up 12 empty water barrels. After making sure they were closed, we pushed them overboard and arranged them in rows of 3. We would build a flat frame on top of the barrels, then laid boards across, finishing with a low wall up around the edge. By evening our raft was in fine shape, but it was too late to load up and start for shore. We got dinner from the ship's stores and then spent the night on comfortable spring mattresses. What a great luxury after our hard, narrow hammocks. The next morning we loaded the mattresses first. We then loaded all our personal belongings from our cabin. Then all the furniture, doors, windows, frames, bolts, and locks in the captain's cabin. Then came the officers' chests, and the carpenters' and the gunsmiths' chests. These last were immensely heavy. With plenty of space left, we poked around for other cargo. The ship's mission had been to resupply a distant colony, so nearly everything aboard was useful to us. A large chest of tableware would surely delight my wife. Deep in the hold were a number of young fruit trees, carefully packed and labeled apple, pear, chestnut, orange, almond, peach, apricot, plum, cherry, grapevine. We found blacksmith's tools, plumbing equipment, lead, paint, grinding stones, cart wheels, shovels, plows, and even a disassembled sawmill. There were sacks of corn, peas, oats, and wheat. We had a hard time deciding what to take. The next storm would probably destroy the ship, so the decision was crucial. The grain and fruit trees were first. We loaded a compass, fishing lines, reels, ropes, and a couple of harpoons. Remembering the shark, Fritz outrigged the harpoons as if going whaling, much to my laughing approval. By early afternoon, we were ready to sail. With the raft in tow, there was more potential for accident. Fortunately, the sea and wind favored us, and we were able to spread the sail. We were making fine progress when Fritz spoke up. "I see something odd floating in the distance," he explained. "Can I have the telescope?" After he looked, he handed me the glass. "It's a sea turtle. Appears to be asleep," I said. "Let's steer toward it, Father," Fritz exclaimed. I did so, to give him a nearer look. Had I known his intentions, I might have gone the other way. The sail blocked my view of Fritz's actions, but I felt a shock, and then the sound of line going through a reel. Before I could call out, there was a second shock. To our dismay, I felt our boat being hauled rapidly through the water. "Fritz, what in the world are you doing? If he dives, it'll sink us." "I got him," crowed Fritz. "I got him for sure. Amazingly, he had managed to harpoon the turtle, which was now paddling away. A giant sea turtle is slow on land, but swift and powerful on water. I hurried forward to cut the line. "Father, wait," he pleaded. "I promised to cut the line if we are in danger. Let's catch it if we can." I frowned. "My son, if we lose all our goods, this turtle will cost us dearly. He may even drown us. For heaven's sake, be careful." "I will wait a few minutes, but cut the line at the first sign of trouble." As the turtle began to make for the open sea, I hoisted the sail again. It was one thing for the turtle to tow our entire rig. It was another for him to battle the wind, as he soon tired and headed for land. Under wind power and turtle power, we flew shoreward, but far to the left of our usual landing place, rather near Falconhurst, in fact, and not an ideal spot. Our boat grounded out some distance from land. The exhausted turtle tried to escape, but I leapt overboard and finished it with my axe. Fritz fired his gun and shouted with glee, in hopes of bringing the family down to meet us, and soon they came. The raft and cargo were of great interest, but my wife's chief pleasure was having us home safely. As expected, she was not pleased at our overnight absence. It was important to get some goods unloaded before nightfall. The boys went for the animals and sledge, while I anchored the boat and the raft with some iron blocks we had brought. The turtle was so huge that we could only bring the saplings in this load. Back at Falconhurst, the first priority was to get some turtle meat. My wife had misgivings, but I turned the beast on its back and broke the undershell with a hatchet, and soon I had a large piece of meat, shell still attached, and suggested that she cook it with a little salt. "First let me cut away this disgusting green fat," said my wife with a little shudder. "No, leave it," I exclaimed. "Gourmets pay handsomely to get it. If there is really too much, save some as lard and give the rest to the dogs." "Look at that shell," cried Fritz. I could install it by the stream as a basin, always full of clear water. How about that?" "An excellent idea," I replied, "if we can find enough clay to make a firm foundation under it." Jack chimed in. "I have a big lump of clay over there, under that root." "Well done, my lad. When did you find it?" "He found a bed of clay near the river this morning," said his mother, "and came home a complete mess. I spent an hour cleaning him and his clothes up." "Well, mother, I found the clay by slipping and falling in it." "Probably, considering how you were covered in it," answered his mother. "This morning, however, you made it sound like you had gone hunting for the clay on purpose," she added. "When you finish discussing this," said Ernst, "I'd like to show you some roots I found today. They're drying out now, and they look like radishes, but the plant was almost a bush. Our old sow is devouring them, but I haven't yet dared to taste them myself. You did wisely, my boy. Pigs can eat almost anything. Let me see these roots." I examined them carefully. "This is brilliant! If these are manioc roots, as I believe they are, then we will never starve. In the West Indies, they press all the poisonous juice out of these and then bake cassava bread from them. I think I know a way to do that." There was still enough daylight to make another sledge trip, and I took the 3 older boys, leaving Franz to help his mother with dinner. As we went along, Fritz said, "Father, I've been thinking about this turtle. Isn't this shell too valuable to use as a simple water trough? At home, people pay much for turtle shell ornaments." "You're thinking of a different species of sea turtle," I explained. "The kind you caught is only good for eating." His concept of value would change as time unfolded, but this process couldn't be hurried. On our next trip, we loaded the sledge with chests, cartwheels, and the grinding mill. Adding a number of smaller items, we hurried back to Falconhurst. My wife welcomed us with joy and firm orders. "You have been working too hard, so no more work today. Now come and see, because I have something special for you." She showed us a small barrel, half buried, well sheltered, with leaves and branches. "You might wonder where this came from," she continued, "but I found it by myself on the beach, and I suspected it was wine. So I brought it up here to be ready for you. The boys are anxious to know what sort of wine it is." I was too, so I opened the vent hole and inserted a straw. "This is dry canary wine, some of the finest I've ever had," I announced. My wife clapped her hands with joy at her find. The boys pressed around with straws, asking to taste it. I could hardly deny them, after expressing such joy myself, but they must also have a lesson. I let each have a brief taste, but only that. Never drink too much of it, I cautioned them, and was pleased that none got too greedy for it. The turtle made a delicious dinner, and we each had a bit more wine. Afterward, we hauled up the new mattresses and closed this highly productive day to refreshing sleep. Early the next morning, I got up alone to check on the safety of our boat and raft. All the animals were handy except the one I wanted, the donkey. I couldn't use the cow because she hadn't been milked, so I went hunting for him and found him nearby. At first he didn't want to come, but he soon realized he would have no peace until I got my way, and we headed down to the beach. The boat and raft were safe. I collected a light load and then hurried to Falconhurst and breakfast. As I approached the tree, however, I heard nothing. No one was up. The sledge clatter woke my wife, though, and when she looked outside, she was mortified. "We've overslept," she exclaimed. "Get up, all of you. It must be these mattresses. They're too comfortable." The boys came tumbling down the ladder with much stretching and yawning. Ernst, last as usual, said, "Come on, this won't do," I scolded. "Maybe we could go back to the hammocks." Privately, however, I felt there was more reason for their sluggishness and resolved to be very careful with the wine in the future. "Prayers and breakfast," I went on, "then off to work. We need all that cargo landed in time to get the boat out with the next tide." When breakfast was over, we went to the beach and unloaded all the cargo. Fritz and I boarded the boat and sent Jack and Ernst home with the sledge, but Jack looked too deeply disappointed. "Jack, you can come too," I called out, and the boy splashed out and heaved himself into a tub. I had meant to sail our rig around to the harbor in Safety Bay, but the beautiful day tempted me to visit the wreck. This took longer than I expected, so we had to satisfy ourselves with a small load. Jack came rattling and clanging up from the hold with a wheelbarrow, immensely pleased with himself. Fritz had even better news. He had found a boat. It was in crates, already ready for assembly, complete with rigging, fittings, and a couple of small brass cannon. I was delighted, but there was not time now to assemble it for sea. We did take a copper kettle, iron plates, tobacco graters, 2 grindstones, a small barrel of gunpowder, a box of flints, and 2 more wheelbarrows besides Jack's. After this, we had just enough time to have lunch and sail for shore. Along the beach, a number of little figures stood gazing at us. They looked like children in formal black and white clothing. Except for reaching toward us now and then, they stood very still. "What are those, Father?" cried Jack. "Are they little people?" "No, my son, they're penguins," I explained. "You may remember that Ernst knocked a penguin down just after we landed. They're excellent swimmers, but they can't fly or run, so they're helpless on land." As soon as we reached shallow water, Jack sprang ashore and began swinging his stick. Half a dozen were soon down, and the rest dove into the water. I regretted Jack's actions, for we had far better food than these oily, fishy-tasting birds. To my relief, some of them were only stunned and had begun to get up. These penguins we caught, tied together with long grass, and loaded into the wheelbarrow along with the dead ones and whatever goods we could fit. We set off for Falconhurst at a good pace. The usual noise of our approach brought the dogs, barking furiously. When they saw us, they bounded forward to give Jack a rowdy welcome. They dumped over both the wheelbarrow and Jack, much to his irritation and our amusement. Once we got the dogs off Jack and the wheelbarrow righted, Ernst and Franz and my wife were very curious about our cargo. While I spoke with my wife, I sent Franz and Ernst to catch some geese and ducks and tie a penguin to each in hope that we might tame them. "While you were gone, we gathered some potatoes and manioc roots," she said. "Ah, Father, wait until Mother and I get you some corn and melons and pumpkins and cucumbers," said Franz. "You little chatterbox," she cried. "I wanted to surprise your father with those when they grew up, but you told my secret." "Secret or no," I answered, "I'm delighted to hear it. But where in the world did you get the seeds?" "Out of my magic bag, of course," she replied, "and every time I dig up potatoes, I will plant some seeds as well as more potatoes." "Well done! What a wise, hard-working wife God has given me," I exclaimed. "But why the tobacco graters?" she continued. "I don't like that at all. You aren't going to make snuff, are you? You should concentrate on food, not bad habits. Rest easy, dear. I will not introduce a filthy habit into our family. I brought the graters to help us make fresh bread." "How in the world do you plan to do that without an oven?" "You're teasing me." We can't bake loaves, I said, but once we grind up and press the manioc, I can bake flat cakes on these iron plates. You could help me by making a nice strong canvas bag. She went to work on this, but she also put a pot of potatoes on to boil. Apparently she had less than complete confidence in my plan. Spreading a large sackcloth on the ground, I summoned my boys to work. Each took a grater and a supply of well-washed manioc root. When we were all seated around the cloth, I began to grind a root. The rest followed my example, with much laughter at each other's efforts. No one was tempted to taste the flour, which looked like wet sawdust. In much of the New World, I explained, people like cassava bread. Some European settlers even prefer it to wheat bread. There are 3 species of manioc. 2 are poisonous if eaten raw. The scrapings must be pressed. But when that is done, they make good flour. Why press them, Father? Said Ernst. To remove the poisonous sap, I replied. Even so, we will let the chickens and nips try them first. Our roots were soon ground to damp powder. My wife had finished the bag, so I filled this with our powder and tried to squeeze it. Nothing came out. We would need mechanical aid, so I laid a pair of heavy beams on the ground and then put boards across and laid the bag on them. Next, the boys helped me put more boards on top. Now, I said, we need the heaviest weights we have. Working together, we piled an anvil, some lead, and a number of iron bars on top. Soon, under this enormous pressure, the sap began to seep from the flour onto the ground. My wife came over to watch. Will this flour keep? Or will we have to spend all day tomorrow baking? Once it's dry and kept in barrels, it will keep a long time, I said. But it won't need to. We'll use a lot of it. You'll see. We can start, Father, said Fritz. There's no more poison coming out. Certainly, I said. But we will begin with just 1 cake and feed it to the monkey and the hens. If that works, we'll set up a bakehouse. We took the weights off, and I took out a couple of handfuls of flour and then stirred up the remainder so that we could press it some more. When we got the press working again, I took an iron plate and put it over the fire. Mixing the flour with water and a little salt, I kneaded it into a thick cake and put it on the plate. When it baked yellowish brown, I turned it over. The finished cake smelled delicious, and the boys rounded up 2 hens and nips who gobbled up their cake without hesitation. If it's poisonous, what will happen to them? Fritz asked. Will they suffer? I hope not, but I don't know. We can only hope we have squeezed it all out. But now, I continued, dinner is ready. We know for sure that roast, penguin, and potatoes won't hurt us. Leaving the hens to peck the remaining crumbs, we assembled for dinner. The potatoes were excellent. The penguin was tough and fishy, but less unpleasant than I expected. Filled with anticipation, we climbed up to say our prayers and get some sleep. The next morning, everyone was very concerned about Nips and the hens, so Jack hurried down the ladder to check on them. He soon returned with the good news that all 3 were in perfect health. My wife milked the cow while the rest of us built a large fire. We kneaded the flour into cakes and put them on to bake. To imagine our anticipation, one only needed look back at what we had eaten so far, various types of strange meat, whatever we could gather, and hard biscuits. Real, soft bread seemed like a dream. There were mistakes, of course. Some bread was burnt, some undercooked, but we soon had a pile of tempting cakes. We had a royal breakfast of cakes and fresh milk, and the highest of spirits at our success. When I went to feed the crumbs to the birds, I saw the captive penguins were not struggling to escape, so I let them loose to wander as they wished. Our rewards seemed to grow every day, provided we kept our hands at work and our minds.